And next up, we have Super Eyepatch Wolf, The Unreality of Pro Wrestling. Finish the story. I like it whenever Super Eyepatch Wolf covers wrestling because he has a way to make this over-the-top spectacle look super human and engaging in a way that you only get if you've been a super fan for decades. And as someone who wasn't, because, well, still isn't my thing and never was, I love to see what his perspective looks like because he gives the fans' take on it so well so that you can understand the passion and the drive and the love of the character and to show how things are developing through the good and the bad times, which is different than every other thing Super Eyepatch Wolf does, which, and I've said this multiple times and I will probably say it multiple times, is somewhere along the lines of, hey, check out this cool thing that will leave you a horrible cratered wreck of a human being. It's fun. If you've seen more than one of his videos, you know what I mean. Garfield. I rest my case. Moving on, let's see where this goes. And by goes, I mean, probably actually to a really interesting story.
2 years ago, I made a video called The Unreality of Pro Wrestling, and I am proud of that video, but it has also haunted me ever since.
Why?
Because the story it was trying to tell was incomplete. But
because when he did it, they had still been progressing this. Oh, wait, when he says finish the story, are they talking about actually finishing a plot line for an entire character arc? Or did this guy retire?
now, 2 years later, that story has concluded. And so, what you are watching now is...
Oh, so it is actually a concluded character arc. Did he actually retire?
The most unreasonable, self-indulgent, and, let's be real, concerning video I have ever made.
This is the most concerning video he's made. Oh. Oh my.
A new, massively expanded version of the unreality of pro wrestling. For reasons we will get into, I should never have made this video, but I had to because the story we're telling today, it's not just one of my favorite stories in wrestling, it's just one of my favorite stories, and one that showcases all of what is so beautiful, terrible, and fucking crazy about wrestling as a medium. And so to begin, I want to start with two corrections.
What?
The first being that this is a story not with one protagonist, but two.
Who?
The second being that that story does not start 12 years ago, but over 40. Does not start 12 years ago, but over 40.
Okay. This is a lot different than I was expecting. Because he went into some of the previous storytelling with those characters, but 40... Hey, you want to hear something disturbing? That's the 80s. I'm thinking 40 years ago, what was going on in the 60s? Wait. No. 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 Oh God, that's the 80s. I'm going to get hit by the "you're old" so much today. So much.
It's impossible not to feel something when hearing
Hey, I just realized I have the physique of a wrestler. They don't show bodies like this anymore, probably for good reason.
the story of Dusty Rhodes. Born with
Who's
a bad
Dusty
leg,
Rhodes?
as a child, Dusty would struggle through the pain to put on weekly earliest sign of a pure love of wrestling that would never leave him. Dusty was never a gleaming pretty boy like Ric Flair or a carved statue.
I'm sorry. That
Dusty was never a gleaming pretty boy.
That's a pretty boy? I mean, he does have the Fabio aesthetic, which I've been told is pretty. I'll be honest, it looked like it was masculine adjacent. It's like it has the chiseled jaw, but then it's like, yeah, but you have hair that almost looks like a wig you plastered on yourself. Maybe that's just me.
like
Actually,
Ric
it might actually be a
Flair
wig for all I know.
or a carved statue of a man like Billy Graham. But that was the point. He could have been your dad, your uncle, hell, he could have been you. Dusty earned the love of the people by being one of them. And just listen to how that calcified into a
Oh, that is so 80s hair. Yeah, if I hadn't been told this was 40 years ago, I would completely understand that is 40 years ago, because that is such a perm. It's like the bleach perm at that, unless that's his actual hair color, in which case, yeah. Harkin, 80s definition of a pretty boy? Yeah, that makes more sense. I just realized the ultra super manly man now is an 80s pretty boy. I'm not going to think about this too hard. Fulgrim vibes? Yeah, Haruki. Or Hakiryu? I'm probably butchering your name, sorry about that. Very much Fulgrim vibes.
persona in his legendary Hard Times promo.
I admit I don't look like the athlete of the day supposed to look. My belly's just a little big, my hand is just a little big, but brother, I am bad and they know
40 years ago. I hate how the first thing I could say to this is, wow, they actually gave him a watch. I can't tell if that aged well or terribly.
hard time.
I don't care if you know nothing about wrestling. If you appreciate performance, appreciate drama, you could see the electricity that
he's
flowed
having
through
fun with
Dusty's
this.
matches. Whether he was smashing someone with an elbow strike or just
God.
leaning against a turnbuckle. Dusty just
He's
had
just
that intangible
posing.
X factor. You could feel the moment he'd step through a curtain and an arena
I see why the people
around
like this
him
guy.
would explode. Dusty took on a new title.
What?
The American Dream.
What?
This was an era of wrestling where territories were carved up into different fiefdoms, borders owned by
Wait, what? So the 80s was a lot different, because I think I saw most of the 90s stuff. They got Dusty Rhodes down in Florida, Ric Flair Mid-Atlantic. I don't even know some of these people. There is a lot of chest hair. And then there's just this guy over here who has like chicken arms. Okay, sure.
borders owned by different promotions that were reinforced only by whiskeys and handshakes.
Oh.
This was the old world of wrestling.
When it wasn't just the WWE, WWF, or the alternate companies that run it. It was each company has their area and they're kind of working together. Some don't. Okay.
But a world that was about to be erased by the rise of WWF and Vince McMahon.
When they brought them all
McMahon used
together.
the advent of national television to invade the homes of local wrestling fans, first draining those regional federations of their audience and then of the wrestlers themselves, leaving the
So he literally just stole the talent because he got on TV and did the same thing that happened with baseball, where everything went that. Okay. Yeah, that one does it.
those local promotions either so anemic that they'd collapse under their own weight or be bought outright by McMahon. By the late 80s, the WWF was the
Businessman.
meteorite that had nearly entirely wiped out the old world of wrestling, one of the final remaining holdouts being Dusty Rhodes. Dusty had given everything to the world of wrestling, and it had taken its toll on his marriage, on his relationship with his son, on his physical health, and so now he wasn't about to give it all up and sell to the man that had destroyed that world.
And considering what's come out about Vince McMahon, yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm not going to go into detail about some of the things that have come out about Vince McMahon, that he's done some really fucked up shit, man. Still has a stake in the company as far as I know, though. He's a dick, and that's putting it very mildly.
And McMahon's response was to publicly ridicule Dusty. He named a manservant character Virgil after Dusty's real name. He'd make other wrestlers do ghoulish impersonations of the Dream on national television, like, oh, Jesus, Hakeem the African Dream. Look, we don't have time to get into everything that's wrong here, but worst of all, he'd repeatedly plunder any wrestler who became popular in Dusty's PWF, until eventually the promotion could barely afford to pay its staff. And the impossible happened. The American Dream was forced to leave his own company with nowhere left to go except the WWF. Dusty now under the employ of the man who had destroyed his world.
So just reading Dexter's comment, I'm about to hate Vince McMahon so much more. Oh, I have a feeling, yeah. Because from what little I've known about it right now, he is a vindictive man-child with a lot of money that he can throw around because he happened to get into a good position by getting on TV and then abuse the fuck out of it. And I don't just mean financially. Again, said things that have come out about him that were technically not even secrets, but we're kind of like one of those, yeah, we're just not going to talk about it because he's technically our boss type things.
Watching Dusty in the WWF was bizarre. The American Dream was a proven national draw, arguably at one point the most popular wrestler in America.
And they treat him like a joke
so many
to humiliate
people,
him
an
now.
obvious candidate to become the face of the company and WWE heavyweight title holder.
But Vince McMahon had a very set idea of what someone had to look like. And if you didn't match what he wanted, he would make you a joke.
Which is why, when Dusty made his debut wearing lurid yellow polka dots, it felt wrong. Like it was some kind of humiliation of the American Dream.
Because it probably was explicitly intended that way because he is that asshole.
In the months that followed, that humiliation would only grow worse. Dusty's passionate everyman persona reduced to juvenile skits where he'd fixed clogged toilets, embarrassed in storylines where other men would buy his girlfriend, and he'd be forced to lose a series of feuds against mid-carders who would invariably be fed to Hulk Hogan, including Virgil. Dusty losing 7 times in 2 months to the very character who had been given his name to mock him. Within 2 years, Dusty had gone from being the American Dream to little more than an enhancement talent before finally leaving the company.
Remember when I said at the beginning of this that Super Eye Patch Wolf usually had happy and uplifting stories in wrestling? Yeah, I remember saying that. Oh, yeah, that did not age well 6 minutes later.
His name, his kingdom, reduced to nothing.
Wow, what a fascinating and tragic start. But unfortunately, we need to take a
worse.
brief interlude. See,
Because
whenever I make a video about wrestling, WWE take all my money from it. Meaning,
they're not the only ones. Like every video I've done reacting to this, they were claimed to hell and back. Not blocked though, so I didn't care too much. But also, I mean, that's not what I care about.
roughly, at this point, 7 months of work that went into creating this, YouTube will give me $0 for that. Meaning that this video was a monetarily catastrophic decision the first time, not a mind the second. The literal...
Also, for anyone watching this live, that also means this video probably going to Vince McMahon. Oh yeah, that does actually kind of turn out true. Oh, I feel dirty now.
Only reason I'm doing this is because I love this shit that much. And so, if you want to help justify future awful decisions like this and make these videos
Well, I do make
possible,
awful decisions.
there's two ways you can support the channel.
Sure.
One is my Patreon, where for a single dollar you can get Patreon exclusive videos like me reviewing every game, book, and movie I watched last year, as well as access to my Discord and my secret review whole blog. The second is
Okay, am I the one who's seen him hold that mic and realize I've never seen anyone do that? Because I thought those lavalier mics were supposed to be far from your face and not actually in contact with anything. Unless it's not a lavalier mic, it's just really tall for some reason.
Patch Wolves, my pro wrestling adjacent fake anime that is communicated entirely through a sick ass merch line of
And your own animations about the various product launches. So Kamui can be honest here. This thing just needs to be a show he makes at some point. Granted, he probably need to find some kind of absurdly fast animator to work at the literal graveyard hours. I don't mean graveyard as in late night. I mean graveyard as in anyone else doing it would end up in a graveyard type hours. Because that seems like the only way to get that done.
Of high quality t-shirts, which has its own ongoing storyline that we will see now.
Oh, we actually get to see it? The clown. Considering the clown was the villain of the last t-shirt drop that I saw, yeah, there's a lot going on here. It's like a clown in a ring. Can you imagine? They're probably buying out the main character from the previous drops. At what point do they have enough ad promos to make an entire TV episode? Also, Dexter, you mentioned something about a man called the American Dream having his dream and name crushed by a ruthless corporate businessman. If this wasn't a real story, I think it was a little too on the nose. For the sake of my sanity, I'm going to pretend I don't understand exactly how accurate everything you just said is. Yeah.
It's the moment you've all been waiting for. In the house tonight, cheering me on are some of the biggest celebrities in Angel City, like the one responsible for exposing Crow as the fraud she is. It's Damage! And the other members of the Kings of Violence.
Does she ever stop talking?
Nope.
Oh my god, she said my name! Kinda.
Kings.
And of course, savior to Angel City, CEO of Zero Day Industries, and my beloved boss. Huh? I can't believe it's him! Zero!
He actually made a wolf that needs an eye patch. I guess we've seen the eye patch wolf then. Well, Wolf Sans eye patch.
Are you ready to once and for all see this bitch humiliated? I hope someone either brought a stretcher or a body bag, because those are the only ways she's leaving this arena.
You ever hear that expression? Wolves don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep.
Oh, so it's two wolves. There's the wolf that needs an eye patch and the wolf with the eye patch. Ooh. Seriously, someone just needs to get this guy to make a full-on anime at this point.
I'm gonna enjoy this.
Why isn't this an anime? Then yeah, we get it's perfectly fitting that the corporate overlord and the evil villain joke character, who's also still not a joke, getting to have a scripted beatdown of the main character. That yeah. Also, for people mentioning the best way not to give money would be to demonetize the video. That's the thing. YouTube has changed their terms of service. I can demonetize the video, and they can choose to ignore that. Yeah, it's been like that for a couple years now.
Thanks to everyone who supports the channel. Ridiculous videos like this would be completely impossible without you.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate
Memberships,
people
man.
enjoying the interlude. We now return to our story where we meet the first of our two protagonists. on what is considered by many the most disastrous night in the history of pro wrestling story.
I thought the most disastrous night was the night where they all basically just broke character and showed the Kayfabe, whatever, Kayfabe, was that instead of actual reality by saying goodbye to one of their friends.
Retelling.
Imagine walking into the best moments of your entire life.
Oh no,
The
this
moments
one.
when you finally made it to the place you've
And the script
always
doesn't
dreamed
match.
of, and the brightest future spreads out infinitely before you. Now, am I right? You're meant to be their hero. They're meant to be cheering for you, but they're not. Instead, they roar how you do not deserve this, how you shouldn't be here, how you have ruined the thing they love.
Because in the previous video he covered this part. This is when they had a bunch of obvious falls where even though he wasn't bad, he was so heavily plot armored. Yeah, that's probably the best word to put it, that he kind of just fucked. Wait, I said a kayfabe, right? I did? Oh. Shit.
This bizarre nightmare actually happened in real life to a real person on the night of January 25th, 2015, and to a man named Joe Anawai, also known as Roman Reigns.
I know they gave him the name to make him sound more American, but frankly, the name Joe Anawai kind of sounds badass in its own right. Maybe that's just me, though.
And it's a moment where you can see the fictional reality of pro wrestling separate from the actual reality experienced by its audience. This night,
They broke the
being
illusion
just
more than when they
one small
literally broke
chapter
it.
in a story that stretches back over 40 years. A story that takes place both in real life, in the fictional narrative of wrestling, and in the nebulous unreality between.
Because we're looking at the fake reality pulled together by McMahon, and because kayfabe was still going on, even though he was blatantly taking the American dream and treating him like a joke that was obviously a joke. This is before it completely broke, probably. Or maybe it's close enough that people knew and just ignored it. I wonder how it connects other than just... It's probably connecting because it's showing where the plot being given by Man or McMahon is breaking versus probably where it didn't. And it broke someone.
Okay, this story starts over 10 years ago and a little setup is required. At any point, a wrestling promotion is going to be attempting to build its next top star, the face of the company around whom all major storylines can be built, who can sell millions in merch and penetrate the mainstream, creating new wrestling fans.
Yeah.
Because without that top star who is over with the audience, wrestling promotions can see a disastrous drop in revenue. And that
This is the part I don't get. I don't know how much that actually follows through. I don't know anything about wrestling. I don't know how much the actual fan engagement with the headliner matters. I've been told, mostly from Super Eye Patch Wolf and a lot of the comments, that it is the thing. It is the headliner. It is the poster boy. But I would love to see the actual backroom dealings showing, here are the numbers, and here are the numbers when we don't have the poster boy. I would love to see how much that actually has a direct effect beyond just the fan interpretation. And I know I've said that in his other videos about wrestling, where I would love to see what the backroom looks like. And I've been told there actually are literal books written by retired wrestlers about it. Just, I need more information about that.
That fear is going to play a huge part in our story. See, this was a period when WWE's current face of the promotion, John Cena, had been on top for nearly 10 years. Cena now feeling the pull of Hollywood, meaning WWE needed to find its next megastar, and it needed it now. two potential options being the men Cena would face this night. One being CM Punk, a former indie wrestler beloved by hardcore fans for his...
And because he eventually decided to go scorched earth, they probably head ahead of that already fucked him over.
Ability to make wrestling feel real, but to WWE management, perhaps a little too real. The other being Ryback, a man with a physique resembling two shaved bears wrestling for dominance, which appealed greatly to the real-life WWE owner and legitimate fucking crazy person, Vince McMahon.
If this is the updated version, and we're actually getting more Vince McMahon being called out by name, which has happened multiple times, is he going to bring up some of the shit McMahon has been accused and forced out of the company of? I mean, I think he still owns a proportion of it, but I don't think he's actually in leadership anymore, which is a nice way to say he still owns it, but I'm not sure how much.
Whose oddly obsessive yet bizarrely platonic love of man muscle meant that a lot of people were now speculating that this would be the night where a decisive Ryback victory would see him crowned as the next face of the company.
Just going to throw it out there, I wouldn't be surprised if Vince McMahon really loved watching old Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, specifically Terminator 1, and maybe just that opening where he traveled back in time for no reason. It's just enjoying this cinematography. And yes, the closet seems very much implied.
And that is not what happened.
As the match enters its closing moments and a Ryback victory starts to feel inevitable, three completely unknown men entered the ring and like a swarm of black hornets engulfed Ryback. And there was something so powerful about this image, this giant of a man being devoured by this cloud of darkness as they ripped the match apart, decimating Ryback. This was the first introduction of the Shield. Three brand new wrestlers, their names Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns.
Yeah, I remember this part because they were basically being introduced as the disruptive element to shake things up. So the narrative they thought they were getting was changed up.
Next month, this pattern would repeat as regularly scheduled matches would be hijacked and destroyed by the Shield. It didn't matter who you were or what you did. If you were an employee of the WWE, you were part of the problem the Shield was here to dismantle.
I forgot that was their initial framing. So they made the villain saying, see, there's these people attacking us, and then bringing them into the thing so they become the main headline as a way to take real life criticism and then disable it because the thing that they associate with the criticism becomes changed in universe for them. Yeah. Also, Hakiryu, you mentioned he actually is not Super Eye Patch Wolf, doesn't want to talk about him any more than he has to later in the video. So in other words, it's one of those things you got to talk about it, but he's trying to not go into detail because YouTube probably would not appreciate the statements of what exactly he did.
And it was exciting. When the Shield's music hit, you knew you were about to see something real and violent. And you gotta understand, this was during the PG era, in which a child-friendly WWE would feature cartoonish characters like Santino Marello, a man who would win matches by transforming his arm into a sentient snake and paralyzing people. But now, it felt like that cartoonish world was being invaded by three very real, very dangerous men, and everything about the Shield's presentation enhanced that feeling.
And Not Your Potato, I've already watched this part. Yeah, I've kind of got that interpretation. I'm not sure where the parts I haven't seen are. Because I recognize quite a bit of this. I forgot about the snake thing because snake. They actually, I think I know why I don't remember that part because that's so stupid. I literally blocked it out of my own memory. Ugh. I think this is probably the next part.
Of these three.
Also, for everyone wondering, yeah, I will be jumping around a bit because this is a supercut, but I want to see all the new stuff. Like that intro, I did not know about any of that. That's all new to me, but unfortunately, kind of makes sense. And not your potatoes. Skip to 3100. Okay, I'll try that one. Oh, yeah, I see the chapter. Here we go.
The sky. Now, he did kind of shit talk John Cena once in an interview, but it doesn't matter. That won't have horrifying ramifications later on. Roman even winning the Slammy for Best Newcomer, and so the choice was obvious. Roman Reigns would be the new face of the company, and what could possibly go wrong? And the answer...
A lot.
Is, oh my fucking god.
Roman Reigns becomes the most hated wrestler. Yeah, I remember that part.
One of the most difficult parts in crowning the new face of a promotion is that doing so invariably means not crowning an entire roster of other wrestlers. Wrestlers who could have potentially filled that role.
Oh, Macho Man Randy Savage. Even I know that one. Yeah.
This is what we saw happen with Dusty Rhodes, a man who had proven he could be that guy, and yet was never given that opportunity.
Because we're seeing the exact same thing. That's why he said it was 40. I thought it might have been something about how we're seeing it happen in the past and we did it again to Reigns. It's backfiring.
And the reasons for that could have been that Dusty just didn't fit the image of a typical WWE wrestler.
That man
or they could have been more malicious. Recompense for the fact that Dusty had ever dared stand against the McMahon Empire.
Yeah. And the only reason he probably got hired was so that he could humiliate the man because he's a vicious little child.
We don't know. But where the Rhodes McMahon saga grows particularly strange is in the treatment of Dusty's son, Dustin Rhodes. Dusty was largely absent from Dustin's early life due to him traveling the territories, and while Dusty was initially against the idea of Dustin becoming a wrestler, they would later form a father-son tag team, which meant...
Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. Don't tell me this is going where I think it's going. There's going to be plot lines that are really screwed up right now, aren't there? Oh, I think I know what's about to happen, but I don't want to say it out loud in case I'm right.
Everything to Dustin, as it was the first time he really got to be a part of his father's life. Early in his career, Dustin was known as the Natural, and that's because in so many ways he was the perfect wrestler, with the charisma, size, and look to be the face of the WWF.
Also, holy shit, his hair actually is that bleach blonde. Do they have both kid and the dad bleach their hair that way, or do they just actually have that hair color together? And Dexter going, oh no, it's going worse. Probably. Yeah, I can get that impression.
Only potential problem being his last name.
I call him the Russian. Have him speak in an over-exaggerated Russian accent and definitely have no relation to Rocky. Completely unrelated. And if it happens to look at that, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it worked for Warhammer at this time period, so sure, why not? And look at you, Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau, who is technically still a canon Warhammer 40k figure, who is literally still in the lore and technically never been retconned. So if Disney ever found out, they would have a lawsuit. And even though 40k is litigious, Disney is Disney. Yeah.
Put him in a gimp suit with a ball gag. Rather than looking at Dustin and seeing a potential face for the company, Vince saw something else. Oscar statue who drew heat by being extremely homoerotic to his opponents, caressing them, kissing them, at one point even getting a tattoo of his opponent, Razor Ramon. People to this day are still split on Goldust, and personally, I think the character absolutely preys on the gays'll get me panic.
I am personally gonna come out there and kill.
Oh, you can actually see he's wearing a bald cap. Oh, because it's coming off right in the corner. Kind of surprised I could see that detail on the older picture. And Zero Denova, how many messages do you need to get a video reaction? Dude, we're pretty far from the goal. Don't worry about that.
of you.
Depiction was
Intentionally
absolutely
insensitive.
negative. Looking back, I'm honestly kind of just appreciative that I got the window into that world at all, and particularly in pro wrestling.
Because even though it was meant as an insult, it's probably the first time a lot of fans of it even got the exposure to the idea of, oh, this is different. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely meant. The intention here is as insulting as possible because his dad pissed off McMahon. Yeah, sensitive little man-child.
Character was, of course, massively controversial, and many even saw Goldust as yet another Vince McMahon mockery to the legacy of the American dream. And while
Probably
we can't
meant
say
that way
for certain, it sure doesn't help that Goldust's finisher, which involves booting a person in the bollocks, was called Shattered Dreams. I mean, you know, come on now.
They named the finishers. I'm honestly wondering at this point if how much of this was McMahon and how much of this was the son just working through the anger at the dad. Yeah. Answer, and technically D&D is owned by Disney. No, technically that's still separate. It's owned by Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro, which somehow makes Disney look like a competent, straightforward, and honest company. Disney has done a lot of shit. Like having a child's tombstone destroyed because it was made to look like Spider-Man. A couple years ago, Wizards sent the Pinkertons after someone. You know, the guys who, during the previous century, killed people for money. Yeah, they're still armed. They're still around. And they still came to this guy's house with guns.
Now, that's a little suspect. The sad part is that the Goldust character did actually play a role in the deterioration of Dusty and Dustin's relationship.
Oh, so it was actually done while he was still there? Oh, I was under the impression this was after he retired as a final FU when he couldn't get to the dad anymore. No, this was going on when he was still there? Oh. Also, Zero. I did Jujutsu show fighting too. It's really fun. Oh, I've never actually seen Jujutsu show fighting. That actually sounds awesome. I've seen some actual exhibitions between mostly karate style, but I've never actually seen Jujutsu show fighting. That sounds amazing. The difference between real fighting and show fighting is probably more being aware of other people's timing. It might actually be harder because in a real fight, you're just there to hurt someone. It's over fast. In a show fight, you got to actually keep going longer. So it might even be harder. Not in the fighting sense, but in the actual physical athleticism might be more required to keep going well beyond when an actual fight would have ended. And Siren, you mentioned Disney owns Hasbro, which owns Wizards of the Coast. I didn't think Disney was owned Hasbro yet. I legitimately thought they were completely different corporations. Unless it's a parent company thing. I haven't looked into that far.
Dusty was upset at the direction his son's career was taking, but I think for Dustin, Goldust was his way of doing something impossible. He had
Getting
spent
out
his
from the
career
shadow.
being seen as Dusty's kid, and this character...
Because, so how much of that was McMahon and how much of that was him going along with it because he wanted something different. To both do it and still not be his dad's kid. Maybe just lined up. Getting hit with style? That seems accurate.
That
For
desire would lead to a more disturbing direction.
Oh, God, I thought my freaking screen broke for a second. I thought, why is there part of the screen not showing? No, wait, it's because he actually has a checkered pattern. Whenever you're editing videos, sometimes you have the cutout section, which is sometimes displayed as a PNG, black and white dots. And just for the second there before it zoomed in, it was moving with the character's like, wait, what happened to my screen? What broke? It's not even what it should be, but that literal knee-jerk reaction got me right there. And Siren, Hasbro's original thing was making Barbie, also the toys for Disney. But do they have a license? Or are they correlated with it? Kind of like how EA works in partnership with Disney, or I don't know.
Goldust. As wrestling entered its late 90s Attitude Era, when more intense depictions of sex and violence became the WWF's currency, Goldust would take on a disturbing evolution.
What?
The artist, formerly known as Goldust.
Prince reference. The artist formerly known as Prince because he actually changed his name to the male symbol.
The character would sink into total depravity. He'd come to the ring wearing diapers, he'd crawl around on all fours, collared and gagged, and in a decision that Dustin would deeply regret later in his life, Goldust would make an appearance clad in yellow polka dots and wearing a fat suit. Another open mockery of Dusty Rhodes from Vince, but this time using his own son. The most disturbing part of all this
Yep. And according to chat, this was a 50-50 split between Dustin and Vince. So one is daddy issues and the one is vicious man-child. You know, having said that out loud, I'm not sure which one's which, and I don't think it's even wrong either way.
this is that as Dustin's in-ring persona grew more extreme, his real life was disintegrating. He had developed a crippling opioid dependency to deal with the agony pro wrestling was causing his body, which was...
And this is during the 90s when the oxycodone doesn't addict people was literally a thing told to doctors to say because the Sacklers explicitly lied to everyone and then made sure they were well paid so they wouldn't ask, well, why is that the case? It's an opioid. Why would this one suddenly not be addictive? And then pushed it heavily. So yeah, opioid addiction makes sense. Zero de Nova. I take Punch Out over this, thank you. I don't actually know what Punch Out is. Probably less disturbing than this. This is...
should spiral into a decade-long battle with addiction, and as his identity bled away, it became difficult to tell where Dustin Rhodes ended and Goldust began. Dustin even pitching to get real-life breast implants to push the character to the next shocking extreme, not only becoming estranged from his father, but also
Just
his
to play
daughter
the
Marlene and wife Terry. His real-life family destroyed in a vicious and public divorce that's...
because he was engaging and getting back in his dad, and McMahon was just taking advantage of that to get revenge, petty, empty revenge against someone who wouldn't give in to him immediately. I think I remember why I thought all the wrestling videos Super Eye Patch Wolf did were happy-go-lucky and fun, because I'm only remembering the second half of the Roman Reigns videos, because I checked that out and I forgot how disturbing everything else was. Yeah!
somehow became a live TV segment that felt way, way too real.
And
I don't think Vince necessarily...
Huh. Any odds, Zero? Thanks for dropping in then, man. Wow. A CEO of a powerful company taking vengeance on people who would dare stand against them. This is shocking and completely unbelievable. And I'm hoping our future Bezos overlords would never say otherwise. Hey.
your son into.
And considering the other things that have come out about McMahon,
because that's what Vince does. He takes people and he drains them, leaving them empty and broken. For every face of the company, there are dozens of stories like this. And then there is Roman Reigns,
who was one of the stories of failure after being a face of the company.
Initially, Roman seemed a good choice.
Nah, this is where I'm stopping this one. I almost wish that he had broken these up into two videos instead of making the supercut, because this is good. I love what he's adding in there, but I almost want just the highlights of the news section so I can see what's going on, because this is... I thought the initial stuff on Roman was hard to watch, but finding out that this is a long-running pattern that has been done to multiple people, I will check out the rest of this video. I'll be jumping ahead to the news sections because I've already seen the old ones, but I might leave in some of the later half news sections with the old sections as well, because the later half of the Roman Reigns story was a lot more interesting and less depressing. So if people who've seen this know the timestamps for where the news sections are, let me know. I'll pin that comment up so I can remember it, and I will come back to this, and we will see just how happy and fun this is. Even though the comments have already told me while we're live that the reason McMahon is being brought up so sparingly is because he doesn't want to bring him up any more than he has to. By he, I mean Super Eye Patch Wolf doesn't want to mention this grown man child living out his oppressive fantasies of, hey, I get to fuck you over now because I literally own you. It's fun. I'm sure there's a happy ending. This is fine. This is fine. Anything out, Kaden? All right, thanks for dropping in then. All the same, you guys know the deal. There's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. It's good, but damn if it isn't hard to watch. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.